When it comes to enlightened beings, many people often imagine them as superhuman figures who are always serene, unattached, gentle, compassionate, free from anger or suffering. But is that really the truth? Or just an image created by humans to idolize them? History records many enlightened beings who did not proclaim themselves saints, did not establish religions, nor wished to become icons. Yet people often deify them, adding supernatural stories far from reality, because we want a saint to worship rather than a truly free human being. So how do enlightened beings live? Not by vague theories or distant images, but by the truth of how they perceive the world and exist in life. This is not a story of the supernatural, but the truth about those who see the essence of all things clearly. Many think enlightened beings do not need material things, do not worry about food, clothing, or money, and can live without any needs. But the reality is quite different. Whether enlightened or not, humans still have physical bodies that require food, water, and air. Enlightenment does not transform anyone into a supernatural being who can live without basic living conditions. Those who say enlightened beings do not need to eat, rest, or require material things have either never met a true enlightened person or are creating legends detached from reality. The difference in enlightened people does not lie in material things, but in how they perceive and use them. We often rush to earn money out of fear of poverty, lack, or disrespect. Enlightened people are not controlled by such fear. They may have money and use it naturally, without clinging to it or seeing money as a measure of their value. Without money, they are not worried either. They can live in a luxurious house or sleep under a tree without distress. That is the difference. But that does not mean they automatically have everything without doing anything. They still need to eat or be provided for by others. Many enlightened beings in history did not separate themselves from society. They still worked, communicated, and received help. They did not abandon life, but abandoned attachment. Those who live on mountains growing vegetables and cooking do not mean they do not need material things, but they are not controlled by material things. There is a mistaken view that enlightened beings must give up possessions. The Buddha gave up the royal palace not because he was against material things or saw them as evil, nor to live an ascetic life. He gave up because he realized that material wealth, even luxurious, does not bring true happiness. He was a rich and powerful prince, but still felt emptiness. Leaving was not denying life, but a journey to find the truth. He did not live harshly to prove anything but chose the middle way, living simply, without luxury, without denying basic needs. Enlightened beings may possess everything without feeling burdened, because they do not regard material things as their value, neither clinging to wealth nor opposing material things. They eat when hungry, drink when thirsty, rest when tired, without seeing it as an obstacle. Those who are not enlightened, even if they give up possessions, are still full of desires, fears, and psychological attachments. Giving up material things is not enlightenment, but giving up dependence on them. Wealth or poverty is not important. What matters is whether the mind is bound by external things or not. Enlightened people use money to buy food or housing merely as means, not as goals. They do not earn money out of fear or cling to wealth for safety. They can lose everything and remain calm. But this does not mean they live passively waiting. Enlightened beings are not lazy. They may work, create, and contribute, but not for fame or gain, but from their natural nature. They do not separate completely from the material world, nor deny survival needs. They live in the world without being bound, using material things without being used by them. That is freedom. Many think enlightened beings are always peaceful, never angry or suffering. But is that true? That may be idealization, an image humans project. Enlightened beings still have physical bodies, and their brains react to the world, but they are not controlled by those reactions. When angry, we may shout and argue emotionally. Enlightened people feel anger, but do not lose clarity, neither suppressing nor exaggerating it. They just see it like clouds passing through the sky, letting it disappear without leaving a trace. They do not fight emotions, but do not let emotions control them. This does not mean they are numb or unaware of joy and sorrow. They can be happy seeing flowers bloom, sad witnessing suffering, but they are not bound by joy or sorrow. When happiness comes, they accept it. When suffering arises, they accept it without resistance. If enlightened beings are not controlled by emotions, what motivates them? Many think we act to achieve goals: money, fame, love, recognition. But enlightened people do not act to achieve results. They act from their nature, like the sun shining or the river flowing, not for praise or destination. Is their inner peace absolute? Not necessarily. It is a calmness that storms do not disturb. When difficult, our minds may be troubled with anxiety and fear, trying to control the situation. Enlightened people also face difficulties but do not resist. They accept things as they are. If action is needed, they act. If not, they let things happen. In any situation, they do not lose their inner freedom. So the state of an enlightened person is not numbness or absolute happiness, but a profound and indescribable inner freedom. They do not avoid emotions, nor let emotions control them. They do not try to keep their mind calm by willpower, because their nature is already absolute calmness, a natural state that does not require effort to achieve. Do enlightened beings have superlative wisdom, seeing the mysteries of the universe? They do not need academic knowledge or degrees to become wise. Their wisdom does not come from accumulating information, but from clearly seeing the nature of reality, a truth not obscured by prejudice, fear, or illusion. Humans often see the world through dualistic lenses: right and wrong, good and bad, success and failure. Enlightened beings are not trapped in these frameworks. They see all distinctions as products of the mind and do not judge life by rigid standards. When facing problems, we often think and weigh choices, but enlightened beings do not need to choose because they immediately see what must be done. Wisdom beyond reasoning, not limited by the past or personal views. Their wisdom is like a clear lake reflecting truth faithfully, not distorted by fear or prejudice. There is a mistaken belief that enlightened beings are always right in everything, but this is not true. They may be wrong in specific details, but never mistaken about the essence of things. They do not know everything, but their vision is not clouded by illusions. Enlightened people do not need to argue or prove they are right. When asked about truth, they may answer or remain silent because truth cannot be conveyed by words. Language is just a finger pointing to the moon, not the moon itself. They use words to guide, not cling to them or try to persuade anyone. So, the wisdom of the enlightened is not accumulated knowledge, but clear wisdom, seeing reality as it truly is. They do not know everything but know how to live without being bound by anything, and that is true wisdom. But how do enlightened beings interact with the world? When they appear, they provoke two opposite reactions, either revered as saints or dismissed as fools. Because they do not act according to usual patterns, do not try to please anyone, do not chase social values, nor act to meet crowd expectations. This causes many people to misunderstand and often react strongly. Those who thirst for truth and freedom often feel a strong attraction to enlightened beings. A person free from attachment, a profound peace never experienced before. They are ready to worship, follow, and seek liberation like that. But ironically, enlightened beings do not want disciples or anyone dependent on them. They simply point the way, creating free individuals, not followers. On the contrary, those attached to power, status, money, and selfishness often feel uncomfortable and see enlightened beings as threats. Why is someone who does not care about fame or loss, who is not controlled by ordinary rules, so free? Their presence is like a mirror reflecting the truth about oneself, which many people dare not face. History has shown many enlightened beings were opposed, attacked, even killed, not because they were wrong, but because they threatened the old power structures. Enlightened beings do not care about loving or hating the world. They do not need to be honored, nor fear slander. They do not try to be teachers or prove anything. Those who come to learn, they share with. Those who do not want to listen, they do not force. They do not try to change the world. But their existence naturally creates change. Although they do not want disciples, people still follow. Some turn them into icons, deify their teachings, and from that, truth becomes dogma, freedom becomes doctrine, and people are led into the maze of blind worship. Therefore, enlightened beings do not care how many people follow them, nor need to prove anything. They live in the world like the wind, unbound, leaving no trace, existing just as they are. That absolute freedom makes them mysterious, either revered or rejected, but never ordinary. Is the absolute freedom of an enlightened person about doing whatever they want or going wherever they want? If understood that way, it is mistaken. Humans still have physical bodies, need food and drink, are affected by time and space, and live in a world governed by natural laws. Enlightened beings do not need to leave the world or necessarily retreat to mountains. They live in society, work, communicate, without being drawn into it. They obey laws and fulfill duties, but do not see these as bindings, neither resisting nor clinging. So do enlightened beings still have desires? Desires are not just material cravings, but yearning for everything: money, fame, power, recognition, even the desire for enlightenment itself. Enlightened beings are no longer controlled by such desires. They do everything like ordinary people but are not bound by any need. Hungry, they eat. Thirsty, they drink, but without craving, not pulled by desire. They can live in love without dependency on love. If they have absolute freedom, why do they still teach, help, create, act? Because they do not act from personal motives, but from the natural nature of enlightenment. Like flowers bloom without seeking praise, like lamps shine without explaining the light. They do not help because they want to help, but because of compassion. Do not act to be great, but because they cannot do otherwise. Enlightened beings spread wisdom naturally, without intention. Absolute freedom is not escaping the world, but escaping the control of the mind. Enlightened beings live in the world without being pulled by it, act without bindings, love without attachments, enjoy without craving, live without fear. So, does an enlightened person fear death? This is an important question. Humans often fear death. All actions, whether conscious or unconscious, stem from that fear. Earning money to feel secure, seeking fame to be remembered, having children to continue the lineage, following religion to believe in existence after death. Enlightened beings no longer fear death, not because they believe in reincarnation or heaven, but because they see clearly the true nature of life and death. For them, death is not an end or a loss. They no longer see themselves as separate individuals or cling to a fixed ego. Death is merely a change of form, like waves dissolving into the ocean, wind changing direction, leaves falling from branches. The essence does not disappear. When an enlightened person faces death, there is nothing left to fear. If they are ill, they accept the illness. If their body weakens, they allow it to weaken. When the final breath comes, they let it come without resistance, without clinging to life, nor seeking death, but letting everything unfold naturally as it is. They understand that all attachments and fears are products of the mind. When the mind no longer clings or fears, death is no longer an issue. When an enlightened being dies, where do they go? Is there rebirth? Do they merge with the universe? Or does everything end? This cannot be expressed in words because it is beyond the realm of thought or belief. An enlightened person does not need to believe anything about death because they have seen the truth while still alive. Life and death are just different states of the same reality. The death of an enlightened being is not an end, but a continuation in another form. They no longer exist in human form, but what they leave behind continues to spread in the consciousness of those ready to receive it, not because they want it, but because truth transcends all boundaries of life and death. They are neither born nor lost, not bound by time or space. While alive, they are not bound by life. When dead, there is nothing left to lose, and that is absolute freedom. So, is there a common path for all to reach enlightenment? Or does each person have their own journey? Many philosophical, religious, and spiritual schools try to create methods, rules, and systems aimed at enlightenment. But if there is a common path, why doesn't everyone walk it? Why do enlightened beings achieve that state through completely different ways? The truth is, there is no fixed path to enlightenment, no universal formula, no replicable process. Enlightenment is not a skill to be learned. nor a goal achieved through effort. It is not the result of accumulating knowledge or practicing a method for a certain time. It is not a reward for those who meditate longest, endure the most hardships, or study the deepest. It does not follow any law that humans can grasp. If there is no fixed path, how does enlightenment come? It is your own awareness. Enlightenment does not come from outside, not from a teacher or doctrine. It only arises when you truly see your own nature, see reality without illusions covering it. Each person's journey is different because they are bound by different layers of illusion. Some realize the truth suddenly, like a curtain torn apart. Others gradually remove layers through struggle over years. A big misunderstanding many have is thinking enlightenment is a special state, a magical moment, a miraculous transformation. They imagine enlightenment will make them superior, have special powers, lose emotions, and attain permanent happiness and peace. But that is only an image created by the mind. Enlightenment is not a state, not a feeling, not something to be attained. It is simply seeing the truth that if there is no one to be enlightened, all searching is just the play of the mind. Even enlightenment cannot be possessed. Because of this misunderstanding, many spend their lives chasing something they will never find. They meditate for decades, hoping for a breakthrough moment, read hundreds of books to understand the secret of enlightenment, follow masters and gurus, hoping one day to be awakened. But that very search prevents them. The first thing to let go of for enlightenment is the notion of enlightenment itself. Throughout life, people cling to ego, identity, and the sense of individual existence. Enlightenment is the end of all that, not in a negative sense, but the end of illusion, the dissolution of the self that never truly existed. The mind cannot accept this. It creates fear, doubt, and temptation to keep a person trapped. It convinces them they are not ready, need more time, or have things to do before letting go. But all this is a trap. An enlightened person no longer questions themselves, has no doubt, no search, no need to achieve anything, no clinging to the idea of enlightenment, no need to prove anything to anyone. They do not see themselves as higher or lower than anyone else. They do not fear death, nor cling to life. And the most important thing is, they do not think of themselves as enlightened. Finally, what prevents most people from enlightenment, even when they are very close, is that they still want something, still expect results, still hope for change. But enlightenment is not change. It is realizing there is nothing to change. It is not transformation, but recognizing there is nothing to transform. This is hard to accept because humans always think they have to become something, while the truth is they have never lacked anything. The journey to enlightenment is not really a journey, not moving from point A to B, not a measurable process. It is just recognizing what has always been there, right in front of you, right now. But to recognize that, one must dare to let go of everything once believed real, a step few are willing to take. Dear friend, what I share here is not for you to believe, but for you to reflect on, not for you to follow, but for you to clearly see your own path. If you have listened this far, it is not because I want you to believe, but because you are ready to question. ready to look deeply into the nature of life. If there is any value in these words, it is not because I said them, but because the truth already exists within you. You don't need to go far. Don't depend on anyone else. Just stop, observe, and realize the truth has never left you. Wishing you clarity, freedom in your mind, and enough stillness to see what has always been there.